The longer journey. I want to share with you what I've seen with thousands of couples who struggle with intimacy anorexia in various stages. Okay, I'm going to break this down first, maybe over decades of marriage, although that may ebb and flow a little bit depending on the couple. So I'm just going to talk about stages. Okay, so let me share with you stage one, early marriage. We covered pennies on the dollar. The spouse is over functioning, which means you're doing way more in the relationship and way more to make it look normal. There's periodic conversations about our relationship not working, but they seem to be pretty far apart and pretty soft, okay? You're throwing a bone and we're happy. We try different things to be loved. They say, well, if you'd only do this, then I would love you. And then you do this, and then there's another, well, if you would do this. And so there's some of that in the early stages of paying for love in the intimacy anorexic marriage, okay? Now, towards the end of this first stage, you're probably educating yourself, trying to figure it out, trying to look for a language. I can't tell you how many thousands of people have emailed us watching something about intimacy anorexia on the internet, on YouTube's, on our webpage, and going, oh my gosh, Dr. Weiss, I live in this country. This explains what is going on, okay? You begin to educate yourself. You might go to marriage conferences and try to work on that. You may get a marriage book and try to read that together, okay? But the follow-through may or may not be there long-term. You may go to counselors or even spiritual community people and say, hey, we really need some help here, okay? But at the end of this stage, no permanent change has happened. The Deprivation movie is still there with these intermittent commercials of showing up, be it for stabilization or love. But again, if it's for stabilization, it's short-lived. If it's for love, it stays because I want you to have your needs met. I want to be part of that for you, okay? Stage two, you continue to communicate your pain. Now, the frequency of these communications are getting closer together. We're not waiting a year or two or three. This is starting to cycle in shorter periods of time. The intensity of your communication of your pain gets different. It can get angrier, rage, silence, passive aggressive, but it gets different. It starts taking on a different intensity for you because you're really trying to stop the pain for love cycle. Now, you don't know you're in pain for love, but that's what you're in, and you're starting to feel it. And so you're escalating the way that you're asking for help, okay? And you may ask for help more often. The spouse is feeling more angry, more hurt, as well as starting to feel this depletion in their soul from the lack of being loved and given the nutrition that love gives to the soul. But they're feeling the deprivation. If sex is being withheld, whether physically or just not being present during sex, the feeling of conflict that's going on inside this person, of being privately humiliated by not being pursued and wanted, and yet publicly being affirmed either by the spouse, but also other people look at you and they go, wow, you're really attractive. You know, you got a lot going on. You're beautiful. You're handsome, right? And they give you attention. They respect you. And you go home and it's like neglect and not touched and not wanted. And, you know, I've worked with miss of their states several times. Beautiful women. I've worked with handsome men who haven't had sex in years, okay? The anger and depression increases and can get worse for the spouse. They may adapt with different addictions or start or exasperate an addiction. If they were prone to something earlier in their life, they might pick it back up. If they weren't prone to something, they might start something. Overworking, overserving, alcohol, drugs, sex, food, porn, affairs, intriguing, all kinds of adaptive kind of addictive behaviors can start manifesting in the second stage. And there may be periods of separation. In-house separations are short separations from each other. The word divorce might start floating in at this stage because the pain is escalating in the second stage. And so we have the deprivation, we have the escalation, and then the third stage, here the spouse has felt like they've tried everything they know to be loved. Their intellectual resources, their spiritual resources, their energy is starting to really get depleted because they really feel they're banging their head against the wall because no matter what they do, it doesn't last, it doesn't stick, and it doesn't return, okay? They might believe a promise from the intimacy anorexic that they're going to change a few more times in this stage. But they come to this moment of realization, and it's a moment where they realize they have no value, that they will never be loved, that they are currently not being loved, they're being managed, okay? And life and living is more important than living a lie of being married to someone who doesn't love you. This is the conflict of the third stage, because the grieving is way down towards acceptance. I accept that you don't love me. I accept that you don't desire me. But that's in conflict because I'm an amazing person. And I want to live my life. I want to walk on the beach. I want to hold someone's hand. I want someone to look me in the eye and say, I love you and I want you. I'm hungry for you. I want to see someone crave for me before I die. And this begins to really crystallize and formulate in the third stage. Now, I say in a moment because usually the spouse experiences such clarity of acceptance. And it can be, they missed another anniversary, or they didn't buy them Christmas presents, or they, ignored them for weeks for the 100th time. But the 100th time they get it. They have no value. And it's like a moment of clarity. It's like that when a spouse accepts that their spouse loves alcohol more than they love anything on the earth. And when you realize your spouse actually loves withholding more than you, there's a moment of clarity, and I can't explain it. People experience it. And some of you may be experiencing it on this tape because I'm giving you language, okay? But after this moment, they try to move from hurt. They might beg or be angry or quiet because of the internal indifference they're experiencing from their spouse. It's still there, okay? They might want to care, but they can't seem to find the energy to care. And they feel bad because the spouses are generally really good-hearted people and they really do love very well. But it's like the love's been drained and it's like it's not coming back, and they've moved past angry and they moved into this kind of place that's indifferent. I don't really care if you try. Now, this is a tough place because when the intimacy anorexic tries to love or tries to stabilize, the efforts are not really received like they used to be. You're no longer interpreting it as, oh my gosh, they love me, they're trying really, really hard. You begin to interpret it, this is just another round of the same game. This is nice, I enjoy that you did that for me, but it doesn't have the meaning that you love me. It has the meaning that you're trying to not have consequences in your life. It has the meaning that you don't want the bad things to happen. It has the meaning of, this is more about you and for you than it is about me. And so really, it can be this kind of place that if a couple's there, it could take a while because it's going to take more than a couple weeks to turn this one around because the spouse is up to the game. They get it. But there's not the battery to put into the system anymore to stimulate it to stabilize. Okay? So they, for the first time, they bet in their heart against their spouse. This is the third stage, and it's like, you know what, I bet, and they don't say this out loud. They tell me, but they don't say it out loud. I'm betting actually against you. I know we have a plan, but I know you're not going to follow through. I know this is about to stabilizing, and you don't want the divorce. And I'm not betting for you this time. I've bet for you 50 times before. I believed in you 50 times before. But I believe this dog doesn't hunt. Now, they don't say this stuff to their spouse. They just kind of inside have this kind of acceptance that this dog doesn't hunt. But they might try or let them try and do that. Now, in this grief, we would call it, if we were calling this grief, we would call it acceptance. It's acceptance that they're not loved, and they're probably accepting the future that they won't be loved. And when you accept that you're not loved, that's the hardest thing I ever do in my entire career, is when a man or woman has to accept that they're not loved. There's no evidence. I was just talking to a man on the phone just recently. I said, what behavior support, because the wife knew she was IA, supports that she actually loves you? Give me behaviors. And there was that familiar pause on the phone. And he said, Dr. Weiss, I don't have one. I don't have one behavior. Then why are you believing something that has no factual basis? And I could hear that he was really accepting that he's not loved. And when I tell women, look at the behavior, believe behavior, is that the behavior of someone who loves you? And they conclude no, and they move to that acceptance. It can move them to the place of accepting that they're not going to be loved, okay? Now, not being loved and staying married or leaving and blowing up their life is really a lose-lose issue. They don't want to blow up their life, and they don't want to be unloved, and so either way they choose, they have losses, and this is a very hard thing, okay? And in the Unstuck video, I talk about that. I don't have time to get in that today, but that's a hard thing. So the spouse is really stuck with having to decide, do I live a life that's an image and that's fake and is killing me, or do I blow it up and create pain for people I really truly love? Because they truly love people. They really love people. They really see the souls of people, and they don't want to hurt those souls. So it puts them in an awkward place. And so, as they go through these, stages, the third stage is the hardest because there's not the, yay, let's do this anymore. So if you're in that stage, I definitely recommend you get professional help, someone who's certified in treating intimacy anorexia, because otherwise you'll probably be wasting your time. I want to encourage you, if you see yourself in the earlier stages, to address this now, because this is an addiction process and it doesn't get better unless it gets help.